Hello, it is I, Dr. Cinema, and welcome to another episode of Movie Face Off. Now, in this episode of Movie Face Off, we'll be taking a look at two science fiction robot movies that didn't quite hit the mark when they were released. I'm talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and I, Robot. Now both these movies they were sort of expected to be big things, but they just didn't quite measure up to a lot of expectations. With AI, artificial intelligence, it was a movie started by Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg after Kubrick died during the making of this film. So it's two different director styles that are very different, and they just didn't quite mesh together. iRobot, it's a Will Smith movie, so you think it would be good, but while there are certain parts that are good, overall it's not really that memorable. So we'll be taking a look at exactly which one though is a little bit better than the other. We'll be taking a look at five categories here: cast, story, effects, real world believability, and message. So, without further ado, let's get right into this movie Face Off. So, round one is cast. With AI, the only three people that are worth any mention is David, played by Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense, as a child robot that seeks nothing but to love his mother unconditionally and forever. We've got a We've got another robot played by Jude Law, whose Wikipedia calls him a robot gigolo. That's a really odd way to describe it. I would have called it a robot prostitute, but I guess we're going to go with gigolo. And of course, there's John Hurt, who's the creator of David, and at the end sort of explains what he is and what he is, and all that. And those are basically the only real characters to put any real major focus on. And with iRobot, you've got Will Smith playing the main character of a detective, and you've got Shia LaBeouf, Shia LaBeouf, the guy from Transformers, a couple scenes, and those are really the only two actors whose names I can think of off the top of my head. With the exception of Will Smith, there's really no one here in either of these movies that really stands out as like a big, interesting character. But since Will Smith does do a fairly decent job, and David, played by Haley Joel Osment, is not really that particularly great, I'm going to have to give round one to iRobot for cast. Now let's move on to the second category, which is story. Back to iRobot, it's a detective played by Will Smith who has distrust of robots, lives in a society like where robots do a lot of things, where he uncovers a plot by all the robots try to overthrow human society and take over the United States cities. That's really, even though there is an interesting twist on it with like a detective story and murder mystery, it's really not that original. I mean, robots taking over the world. That's really nothing we have not seen in any science fiction movie before. I mean, Terminator, Alone, so many references. But anyway, I digress. With AI, it's when Stanley Kubrick was alive and first created, he described it as like a technological, modern Pinocchio story. And to be honest, I can't see that in the story. I mean, a robot boy wants to love his mother, but he's not really a real boy, and he just wants to find his mother to love him, and tries to seek out the blue fairy to grant his wish. I mean, blue fairy, really? We're going to go with that really old thing? But it's still a more unique story than the one shown in iRobot, so I'm going to give this point to AI. So 1-1 tie right now. Now let's go on to the effects. Now with the Will Smith movie, it's the effects are decent, but they're really also not that memorable either. I mean, the robots are not really that creative either. It's so obvious a robot. You think they would have a little bit more creativity with it. I mean, it's it's so bland and so boring. It reminds me of the aliens from Signs. I mean, seriously? You couldn't think of anything else? With AI, like, yeah, a lot of the robots do look like just humans, just acting like robots, but we do see a few that aren't quite as like complete in physical form, and it does show like more of the effects differences in this movie, and the cities also are visually very different and at least interesting. Where the city in iRobot is just another big futuristic city, so it's really weird how iRobot with a starring Will Smith has like no really actual creative inspiration with a lot of its designs, and AI does. So again, I'm going to have to give this round to AI, 2-1. Now let's go on to the next category, which is message. Now, since two different directors worked on AI, Stanley Kubrick, who made movies like The Shining and A Clockwork Orange, going up, and as well as Steven Spielberg of E.T. and Jurassic Park, there's it's two different styles, and it kind of like befuddles what the whole message is supposed to be like. I mean, it's like love, unconditional. Like the only thing I can think of is like if you really love something so much, you might get it and be obsessed with it forever. I mean, I really don't know what the actual message of the whole movie is supposed to be. There's so many confusing parts in it that it gets lost and it isn't made clear what you're supposed to get from this. With iRobot, it's again like a sort of a typical story. Robots try to take over the world and such, but Will Smith character does put in like a little bit interesting twist on this. Like before the events of the movie, Will Smith was like in a car with like a 12-year-old girl. I can't remember the reason why, but so like I can't remember why. But anyway, they get into like a little accident where the car is drowning, and Will Smith's character is saved by a robot, but the but the girl is left to die in the lake, and so Will Smith has distrust of robots. And so throughout the movie, sort of realizes that you can't just really distrust robots, distrust technology because of what of the terrible things that can and probably and did happen, but you gotta be able to move on past it and such in order to create a more perfect vision of it. Again, it's a little bit more of a typical message, nothing great, but since the message is more clear in iRobot than AI, I'm going to have to give this one to iRobot. So 2-2. Let's go into the final round, real world believability. Now, iRobot, it's really nothing like a visual spectacle, but that sort of adds to the reality, to the realistic image of the movie. But the whole thing of this movie is like robots are sort of like they're left unchecked enough where they can organize themselves into an army to overthrow humanity. Like, we've watched science fiction movies, people. We know what to do to make sure this doesn't happen. We can put safeguards in computer programs and such to make sure that that doesn't happen. I mean, why do we keep making movies where humans create robots but do not put enough safeguards where robots can then take over the world? I mean, are we really that stupid? Come on! Now, with AI, it's a different kind of like leap of faith you have to take there. But the robots are a little bit more realistic, sort of. Um, this is more of a tough round to talk through than I thought it was gonna be. But how believable is the world of AI? You ask. Fairly believable. I mean, David's created by a company trying to think of ideas for how to create a robot that are different from the ones we already have, like being able to program love into a robot. Like that's an interesting topic of conversation that does sort of happen in real life. And we also got sort of like what would happen with like a robot who really does feel love and is programmed to do that forever, like how what he would do and go for in order to fulfill on that duty. So the movie of iRobot, in terms of real world believability, is just a little bit exasperating about how unoriginal unoriginal and how much it copies from other sci-fi movies. But with AI, gets you talking a little bit, brings up real world discussions and such we've heard before. So I'm going to have to give this one to AI. And with the score 3-2, AI wins this episode. So again, like, comment, subscribe, share, and this is Dr. Cinema. Can't wait to see you next time.